Thank you for being here. I hope you've grabbed some breakfast. My name is Tom Banchoff. I'm director of the Berkeley Center for Religion, Peace, and World Affairs here at Georgetown. I'm also the vice president for global engagement. And I'm really delighted to welcome this great group to our 6th annual Doyle Symposium, which, as you know, is an opportunity to bring together our students, our faculty, and our staff to address critical issues of diversity and difference of importance to our community here at Georgetown, the city, and the wider world. And I know it's a very busy time of year, so on behalf of all the organizers, the whole team, thank you for being here. Just a little background about the program. The Doyle program is inspired by the vision and generosity of William J. Doyle, a Georgetown alumnus who sits on our board of directors. And the program was conceived as and has become a campus-wide effort to address more deeply questions of difference that cut across religious, social, economic, cultural, and other lines, and to address them in their practical and scholarly implications, but also in their ethical implications, as I said, on campus, but also in the city and our wider world. Now, Doyle, we just call it Doyle for short, is a collaboration between the Berkeley Center, the Center for New Designs and Learning and Scholarship, better known as CANDLES, and Georgetown College. I'm delighted that Dean Chester Gillis of Georgetown College is with us here today. And we try to bring these issues into the heart of the university, into classes and co-curricular activities through student and faculty fellows programs and a range of events like this one. Now, metrics are difficult, but we calculate that over the years we've reached about 3,000 students through our programming, about 100 faculty in various contexts, the curricular, events like this, programs like the Junior Year Abroad Network. And I invite you to learn more about the work of the Doyle program through the annual report, which our colleagues at CANDLES put together beautifully. There are copies out front. It'll give you a sense of our accomplishments and our trajectory. Now this year, and today in particular, we want to take up President DeGioia's challenge to members of our community to identify some concrete projects that can build trust and awareness in light of the deep social and racial divisions that continue to plague American society. I think a university has a positive role to play here, and that's what we'll be exploring together this morning. We've invited some of our most talented students. This is really going to be about student perspectives on these key issues, to share their ideas about how engaging difference relates to and can serve to strengthen in concrete ways the pursuit of the common good. So for more background on today's event and our agenda, I'm going to turn the podium over to my friend and colleague Eddie Maloney, the director of CANDLES and a partner on this vitally important initiative. Eddie and the other key players from the CANDLES and Berkeley teams, I'll just mention 3, Jocelyn Schultz, Michael Kessler, and Melody Fox Ahmed, have really forged a model collaboration around a critical initiative for Georgetown today and into the future. So with that, please join me in welcoming Eddie.
Thank you, Tom. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well this morning. Like Tom, I am very happy to welcome you to this year's Doyle Engaging Difference Symposium. I'm going to put on my glasses, actually, so I can see what I'm saying, which, as you get a little older, that becomes a problem. This is an incredibly important time at Georgetown and in the world, and we're very proud that the 2015 Doyle Engaging Difference Symposium can contribute to the conversation about the issues of diversity and difference in our community. We hope today's symposium will be a space for dialogue and sharing, a space for us to talk and engage with one another on a range of issues that will help us be a stronger, more vibrant, and diverse community. As Tom mentioned, a large part of today's program is hearing from students who responded to a call for ideas that would help us all work toward a stronger, more diverse society. I must say that the range and quality of proposals we received was truly impressive, and we're pleased to place these students' ideas at the center of today's program. Nearly 40 graduate and undergraduate students submitted 18 proposals on an impressive range of topics, including curricular reform, proposed new majors, support for strategic student recruitment and admissions plans, strategic planning recommendations for Georgetown in relationship to financial, political, and ethical issues. The word cloud that you see behind me and is outside on a variety of posters was created using all 18 proposals, so some of the stronger ideas and more prominent ideas that came out of those proposals. There you can see a wide range of topics addressed by the student proposals, and from which we've identified 5 key themes that emerged. These themes, which you can also see reprinted on the placards on your tables, are pursuing excellence through the curriculum, engaging difference through co-curricular opportunities, living Jesuit values, engaging difference through the lens of faith and values, engaging Washington, D.C. in connecting globally, and embracing community, student life on campus. We've grouped our tables to these key themes with 2 tables dedicated to the topic of academics and the curriculum, a particularly strong theme throughout the proposals. After we gather lunch and come back, we hope you'll participate actively in discussing these themes throughout the symposium. So choosing winners this year was very difficult, an excellent pool of submissions, and proved very challenging. All were incredibly inspiring and wonderful to read, but some clear standout proposals emerged. As you can see in the program, in addition to a first, second, and third place prize we had planned to award, we also added 2 honorable mentions and a jury prize. The jury prize was created to acknowledge a proposal that, due to the hard work and leadership of its authors, has gone beyond simply being a great idea, but is now part of a much larger campus-wide conversation and decision process around a significant change to the undergraduate core curriculum. This is truly an incredible accomplishment and achievement, and you'll hear about that more shortly. We'll begin today's programming by recognizing our award winners. They all have been asked to introduce their proposals for 3 to 4 minutes, after which we'll have about 10 to 12 minutes for questions and conversation. After all the awards have been given, we'll break for lunch, which is outside along the tables where breakfast was. And we'll ask that you get lunch as quickly as you can and get back to your tables, where we'll continue the conversation about the ideas we've heard and discuss additional ways we might work toward a more just and diverse community. We've invited all the students who submitted proposals to join us, and so hopefully you'll be able to hear more about the range of proposals submitted during the process. I now have the pleasure of introducing our third prize award winners, Michaela Beltran and Lillian Trey. Michaela is a sophomore government major, while Lillian is also a sophomore. Lillian, also a sophomore, is a dual government and sociology major. Their proposal is entitled Creating a Modern Equivalent of the Original Hull House. As many of you know, in 1889, Jane Addams changed the social fabric of Chicago with the settlement of the Hull House, a building that served as a meeting place, home, art gallery, education and cultural hub, and as a center of social reform. The key to her concept was that activists would be part of a community and part of the community they wanted to help. Today, Georgetown has a long history of living its Jesuit identity in the community by forming partnerships with DC communities through such things as DC Reads tutoring, outreach to the homeless, and community-based learning courses. Michaela and Lillian's wonderful concept paper connects Adams' vision with our university. Please join me in congratulating Michaela and Lillian on their award.
Hi, thank you so much for having us. My name is Michaela Beltran.
And I'm Lillian Tay. So the idea that we have for you today is a modern-day Georgetown University Hull House. Faculty and students would bring the expertise and resources of main campus to a permanent home base in another DC community. Our idea, however, is not entirely new. University of Notre Dame has a summer service learning program in which students earn class credits while working in an agency or parish for 8 weeks. Outside of university, there are other initiatives such as the Jesuit Volunteer Corps and the AmeriCorps. While Georgetown programs try and meet the needs of both the servant and the community, that distant feeling of separation from physical and socially constructed norms still remains.
That distant feeling, the problem we're trying to solve, is a pretty universal one, which makes it an important one to tackle. Although Georgetown has plenty of community engagement initiatives that do wonderful work for DC communities, there's still a feeling of distance between students and community members. As a DC Reads tutor, I was able to help a young girl with the same name as mine improve her reading skills in a short period of time. But afterwards, that was it. I don't know how she's doing in school anymore, and I haven't seen her since. What if we could help students who desire a deeper connection, like Lillian and myself, achieve something incredible by feeling truly integral to a DC community? What if we went beyond service so students could help communities through participatory action? It starts with a house. But we don't want to just drop into the community because then we'll just look like outsiders. We have to cultivate our existing meaningful relationships with several nonprofits that could support us in creating the programs in this house. Nonprofit and social initiative partnerships are the key to making Hoya House feel more natural to the community. Then we have the Georgetown students. We could have a small number of students living together in Hoya House along with some kind of supervisor, like a chaplain in residence or maybe even a faculty member. These students might come in with an intended project they would already like to implement, such as a research project or a class they would like to teach. They could also work with a nonprofit, or they could support the Georgetown programs that would now have a place to call home in another DC community. We also envision a place where the community would feel open to just hanging out with the Georgetown students, a youth-run cafe that could employ students and youth from the community. Because ultimately, the goal is to create a safe space where Georgetown students and community members feel completely comfortable with each other, collaborate with each other, and create mutual benefits from it. Jane Addams once said that the only way for people to truly understand each other is by living together. By living with the community and getting to know its members on a deep level, students would realize that there isn't much difference between the members and us. Through Hoya House, Georgetown could be the driving force behind critical empathy among young leaders. They would be the ones to disrupt the norm on Georgetown's campus and engage difference and diversity deeply. And Hoya House would support them completely. Thank you.
So we have some microphones making their way around the room if anyone would like to ask Michaela and Lillian some questions.
Hi, I'm Professor McMorrow. Thank you so much. Would you also have members of the youth community living there within the same building, or is it more being part of the neighborhood?
It's more being a part of the neighborhood, and it's more about getting Georgetown students to live with the community. There's also a DC statute that states that no more than 6 people can live in a residence together, so that also limits the number. Mm-hmm.
Hello? Oh, great. So the residential college, is it going to be like a living learning community? As in, how many other students expected to stay there for a year or more than a year, or what does that look like?
So the time span we're still trying to figure out. We think the most ideal situation would be a semester-long time for students to live in Hoya House. It could also be a year-long or a summer. Living learning community might be a good way to describe it, but it's definitely a lot more than that. It's definitely more about being a part of another community and getting to know another community rather than sort of forming your own. So living learning community is a good way to it's a good sort of avenue to what we're trying to do.
Hi there. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Sylvia Undar, professor here at Georgetown. I was wondering if you had in mind daycare, because daycare seems to be something that's really important for a lot of people in the community. There's not enough of it, and it's a great way to interact with communities and share, the value of raising children, and that's a wonderful place to bring children into the lives of Georgetown students who usually don't have much interaction.
No, we haven't thought of that, but I think it's a great idea. The main driving force behind programming in Hoya House would be the students. And ideally, if we can design it this way, whenever new students would come into Hoya House, they would have different projects to implement. So daycare would definitely be one of them that could be a possibility.
I had a question about what would happen after you lived in the Hoya House. So you mentioned that when you were in DC Reads, you got to make a connection with your tutee or who you were tutoring. But then afterwards, there was no engagement. And so I wanted to know what you had in mind for after the summer or after the semester, or after the year-long program. How would people stay connected to the community?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So at my other venture, we focus on a similar issue of trying to connect unnecessarily distant communities. At Kaya Collaborative, we connect Filipino diaspora leaders to social sector internships in the Philippines. And we focus on creating a life-changing, special experience in the summer so that with the idea that they will come back to the US and create new and better programs for engagement here. And it would be a similar construct with Hoya House. We would focus on creating a really strong program while they're at Hoya House. And then once they leave with the knowledge of whatever they learned from their experience, they would come back to campus and implement new projects, and we would, of course, support them. But we are confident that if they had this experience, they would feel obligated to disrupt the norms on Georgetown campus.
Hello. Hey, I was wondering if you'd given any thought into ideal communities to propose this Hoya House.
We have. We've thought a lot about that. Georgetown has a sort of connection to Ward 7 for nominal reasons, and we've definitely thought about Ward 7, but we don't want to restrict it to just that that community because it's not restrictive in that way. Because Georgetown is so far off from the rest of DC, we've thought of placing this house in a section that's between Ward 7 and 8, and Georgetown. But again, that's pretty flexible, like most things. Yeah.
How would you incorporate the needs and desires of the community into the programming? Specifically to prevent the type of situation where, you see in like humanitarian operations where the best of intentions don't have the intended outcomes.
Yeah, so the students would go through a rigorous application process. We wouldn't choose students who wouldn't understand that they have to go into the community with a completely open mind and no sense of expertise whatsoever. And as I mentioned in the presentation, the partnerships with nonprofits and community engagement initiatives in DC would be the key to trying to figure out the best programming. So, of course, we're going to try our best to make sure that this whole house doesn't seem like a complete outsider. And we've also thought of ways of scaling up, possibly partnering with a place-based nonprofit that's already there, and then working our way towards creating like a real house after that.
Chester Gillis, I'm wondering, what would you do for transportation for students if they live in Ward 8, for example, for their classes at Georgetown, and how would you fund the whole project?
Yeah. Well, the funding is definitely an issue. We're hoping Georgetown would be able to sponsor that. Of course, that's a big ask. As for transportation, ideally, the students wouldn't have to go to classes at Georgetown. It would be sort of like an immersion program for a semester or even a summer, which would definitely not require them. We were also thinking of just using the vans that we already have for the CSJ initiatives. But again, transportation is flexible. They could also use public transportation. There are buses.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Michaela and Eileen, very much appreciate it. I'd like to introduce Jocelyn Lewis, who will award the second prize.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm Jocelyn Schultz Lewis, an assistant director at Candles, and it's my pleasure to introduce our second place awardee, Catherine Pataka. Catherine is a senior biology major with a STIA, a Science, Technology, and International Affairs minor in the global health concentration. She's also a crew chief on Georgetown Emergency Medical Response Service. And in addition to her work and classes at Georgetown, she's currently doing an internship at the National Institutes of Health and will continue there after her graduation in May. Her proposal started as a paper for a course she is taking this semester. In the feedback she received on the paper, her professor suggested she ought to find a way to, quote, make it happen, end quote. And so here we are. Catherine.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to be talking about mental health at Georgetown and how to improve it. I believe that one powerful way to bring the Georgetown community together is by maintaining good mental health on campus. Mental illness in a college setting is not only extremely debilitating, but also extremely divisive to community. People with mental illnesses often become isolated and stigmatized. In many cases, their mental illnesses can lead to attempts to hurt themselves or others, shattering the safety of our communities. I've seen this firsthand as an EMT on Georgetown Emergency Medical Response Service. Often we are the ones called when there's a mental health crisis so severe that someone is injured or almost injured. I have seen and heard from my fellow EMS providers of too many suffering students who believe that their only options are to cut themselves, overdose on medications, or jump. Consequently, in order to prevent these mental health crises, we need to become serious about filling the gaps in our mental health resources on campus here at Georgetown. And I believe that this can be effectively done by task sharing through students helping other students. In the United States, 60% of individuals with a diagnosable mental health disorder have not received any kind of healthcare treatment in the past year. This gap in treatment of mental health disorders is particularly severe on college campuses. Multiple studies have found that untreated mental disorders are highly prevalent in student populations, with almost half of college students meeting diagnostic criteria for at least one mental disorder. In recent years, the mental health of adolescents has received a national spotlight, with many well-publicized suicides of college students and school shootings perpetrated by adolescents. Despite the prevalence of mental health disorders on college campuses, studies have found that in a given year, anywhere between 50 to 76% of students with a mental disorder fail to utilize mental health resources. Students with debilitating mental health problems are going untreated, compromising their own and others' safety and physical health. If we are serious about creating a safe and supportive environment for our students, as well as preparing them to succeed socially and economically in the future, then maintaining the mental health of our students needs to be a top priority for our administration. Right now, I see two major problems with maintaining mental health in college students: the perceived barriers by students to seeking help and the shortage of mental health professionals on campus. Multiple studies have found that the most common barriers to college students seeking professional help for their mental disorders involve an unwillingness to talk to school staff and financial constraints. The other major problem with delivering effective mental health care to college students is the shortage of mental health professionals on college campuses. According to a 2008 survey, the overall ratio of students to psychological counselors on campuses is about 1,900 to 1. Multiple other studies have confirmed that college counseling centers are overstressed and lack sufficient resources to adequately treat mental health on campuses. So, my proposed solution is to train students to be community mental health workers. In this model, the role of the mental health specialist, in this case our CAPS psychologist or psychiatrist, is reconfigured to emphasize training, supervision, and tertiary care, while the bulk of direct care and service delivery is transferred to community health workers, in this case our students, who would receive specific training and supervision in mental health. This type of mental health task sharing has proven to be effective by multiple academic studies. For example, one study demonstrated that 75%, compared with the 45% in matched villages, of mothers with depression in rural Pakistan recovered due to cognitive behavioral therapy administered by community health workers. Students acting as community mental health workers offers multiple advantages. Primarily, it is because students are more likely to confide in other students. Additionally, because mental illnesses are shaped by a patient's culture, having a variety of students functioning as mental health workers ensures that someone with the same culture, background, and current situation as the patient will be able to properly understand and treat the illness. Finally, with students acting as community health workers and seeking to routine and ongoing mental health care, the limited number of mental health professionals we have would have more time to focus on patients with severe mental illnesses and deal with emergency mental health situations. And in addition to the ongoing treatment of mental illnesses, student mental health workers would also be able to act as educators on campus. Student mental health workers would raise awareness about mental illnesses, help reduce stigma surrounding the issue, and most importantly, identify new individuals who need treatment. Indeed, a program that uses students to raise awareness on and treat sexual assault already exists at Georgetown. In this program, trained sexual assault peer educators work to transform the Georgetown community's understanding of sexual assault while providing survivor support. It would not be a huge step to create a similar program focusing on mental health. So, in conclusion, I truly believe that college students working as mental health workers have the power to transform mental health treatment on college campuses and make our community better for everybody. Thank you.
We'd now like to open the floor to questions for Catherine.
Hi, Amy Vandervliet. So one of the issues that gets raised with mental health treatment oftentimes is that because there's not enough properly trained mental health workers, you have people who are unprepared to deal with this. What kind of training would you have for students to make sure that they are adequately prepared to address any of the issues that they might face?
Yeah, so it's definitely an issue. So like I said, I see the role as reconfiguring our current specialists in sort of doing very rigorous training of students. So I would potentially envision maybe a month-long a semester-long or 2-semester-long training program where students are trained by the CAPS psychologists and psychiatrists to deliver mental health interventions. But a lot of these mental health interventions that focus just on interpersonal therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy are fairly simple to perform. For example, in India, Vikram Patel, who is a very strong advocate for task sharing mental health, that just teaches his workers to solve issues by essentially just problem solving in the wider community. So a big part of it would be connecting students who need it to other resources on campus. And they're simple interventions and they can be applied to great effect.
Hi.
Hi.
I was wondering, what does Georgetown's liability look like if a student mental health worker's intervention breaks bad?
I definitely can see that, I guess, potentially being a problem. I guess I would say that I'm not sure there's a lot of ways that a student mental health intervention could necessarily go badly, because it's mostly focusing, like I said, on interpersonal therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy. But I guess I'm not sure what the liability would be. But like I said, I would see the role of the CAPS psychologists and psychiatrists moving towards more emergency mental health care. So if potentially a student did face a crisis with one of their patients, where one of their patients progressed to wanting to hurt themselves or others, then I would see more availability for CAPS psychologists and psychiatrists to help deal with that and prevent any sort of harm coming to either the patient or other students.
Hello, my name is Kendra Northington.
Hi.
I wonder if you've considered sort of support groups or a group style model for students and the possibility of sort of long-term care using student mental health workers.
I think that would be great. I know that there are support groups on campus. Already there are a couple. I know that every semester I get an email about different support groups on campus, but I think that, like I said, having students run them and transitioning potentially away from the limited number of psychologists and psychiatrists we have running them would be a great idea. And I definitely think that, like I said, that students best understand other students and that they can really help with making somebody understand and process their illness better.
Hi there. I'm back here.
Okay.
So yeah, I definitely agree with that, the nature of that interpersonal relationship. But what would be your plans with dealing with the private nature of the patient interventionist relationship when they're simultaneously peers on campus as well? Thanks.
I think that a strict nature of confidentiality definitely helps that. Like I said, I'm an EMT with Georgetown EMS, so I regularly see and treat students for a variety of potentially very sensitive issues. And we've never had a problem with it because we are very strict about our confidentiality. We protect our patients, and we are very strict about that. And I think that enforcing that same culture in these student mental health workers would achieve something similar. I mean, it's essentially a form of doctor-patient confidentiality. What's discussed between you and your patient is between you two and should not be shared with others.
I was wondering if there are two, Marilyn McMorrow, I was wondering if there were two assumptions behind what you're proposing. One is that it's going to be normal in a life to go through a period of mental illness, and that if we can sort of normalize that and make it understandable rather than stigmatized. Last night, some of us were at a presentation where a question was asked, how do you handle burnout? And one person said therapy. And I thought that was such a gift to the audience. It's like it's going to be necessary at certain times in one's life. So that's one question. The second one is are you really making a parallel between the success of germs on this campus and what could be a kind of parallel core?
To answer your first question, I definitely think that this could have an effect of helping to normalize seeking treatment. I know a lot of students and a lot of friends of mine that don't want to go to CAPS or don't necessarily want to get involved with mental health therapy because they are afraid of, one, the stigma, or also potentially they're afraid of being asked to leave their college or their studies. And I think that if they had the opportunity to maybe talk with students instead of with school staff, then maybe that would help them. That would encourage them to seek treatment and encourage also for it to be discussed more on campus if students are the ones providing this therapy. So I definitely hope it would have an effect of reducing the stigma of mental health treatment. And then in terms of the parallels to germs, I think that germs is very successful at what it does, but its focus is transporting people to hospitals, whereas I hope that this would be a way to keep people out of hospitals. That's the goal, is to keep our students healthy. So like I said, I see this as a way to keep people from having to call us, because we would prefer that all our students were healthy and safe.
Hi, Timothy Lowe. I'm really glad to see that this is being addressed sort of in this symposium. I don't know if you know Madeline Ringwald or Phil Deering, but both of them were leaders for an alternative spring break on mental health. I just went on a few weeks ago, and this is something that our group has been talking about a lot as well. So I'm really glad to see that. I'm just curious as to how you envision interventions to look like. Are you planning to house it like in CAPS or in germs, or like what will the hours look like? Are you planning to do like a hotline, online chat thing? Because like all these are possibilities that we've been talking about in our group.
Yeah, well, I guess the way that I sort of envisioned this would be that students would be trained as these mental health care workers, and then they would be assigned to students who are currently undergoing some sort of therapy process with CAPS or outside of CAPS. And this, it would be sort of a one-on-one assignment, and there would be, I guess, I don't know exactly what the ratio would be, but maybe one student mental health worker to 2 or 3 students on campus. And they would meet regularly, maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks, to sort of talk and to undergo this interpersonal or cognitive behavioral therapy, whatever the students, whoever the student that was suffering from the illness, whatever they needed. So I suppose I see it mostly, like I said, as delivering interpersonal and cognitive-based therapy. But I definitely, like I said, there is a potential for a student getting worse or being in a crisis situation, in which case I definitely think there needs to be a direct line, a reliable direct line to our CAPS psychologists and psychiatrists in order to help in those types of situations.
Hi, Sylvia Onder again.
Hi.
What do you see a connection between mental health on campus and alcohol use and abuse? And would this potentially be a place to address that fairly widespread problem?
I'm not exactly sure what the statistics are in terms of students who are suffering from mental illnesses and who also are abusing various substances. But I mean, I take in abnormal psychology right now, and students who have, and people who have mental health disorders are more likely to abuse various substances. So it definitely could be a way to reduce the extremely dangerous end of drinking behaviors on campus, I think. I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question? Yeah, I mean, like I said, in classical psychology, they are very intertwined. So if students were feeling safer and more secure, then maybe they would feel they would feel less of a need to abuse substances like alcohol.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
It's my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Melody Fox Ahmed.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Melody Fox Ahmed from the Berkeley Center for Religion, Peace, and World Affairs. I'm so pleased right now to introduce our first place winner, Devika Ranjan. Devika is a sophomore in the School of Foreign Service, class of 2017. She majors in culture and politics with a focus on human rights, art, and revolution. She's interested in issues of social justice and self-expression. She's also the class of 2017 representative to the SFS Academic Council. She serves as a freshman RA. She's part of Mask and Bauble Dramatic Society, and she teaches Bollywood Zumba classes. And also at the Berkeley Center, she's part of the Doyle Undergraduate Fellows Program, which is a new program that we've started this year through Doyle. Several of the student fellows are in the room today. And her work in that program, which is a year of interfaith and intercultural dialogue, service work, and independent research projects, focuses closely on the themes that she's going to talk about here today. So let me tell you a bit about her project. She is proposing community art around campus to celebrate and educate others on the diversity at Georgetown by removing the boundaries of a stage. So we're very excited to hear from Devika, and I welcome her up now.
Good morning. It's a bit of a PowerPoint, yeah? Perfect. Oh, cool. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Devika Ranjan, and as Melody just mentioned, I'm a freshman RA, residential advisor. And over the course of this year, I've witnessed 100 freshmen navigate from being their first year as Hoyas. See, we spend our freshman year breathing in Georgetown. We really listen to the people around us, perched on a Leo's table or in the bowels of Lao or strewn across Healy Lawn, immersing ourselves in who they are as people, what they believe, their passions, their opinions, without agendas or expectations. And in these first few months, we're reveling in the trifles of Georgetown, how professors' eyes light up when they talk about their research, the bustle of Red Square between classes and the all-nighters of library study groups. There's this openness, this commitment to experience and tasting university life. As upperclassmen, though, and even within my second semester freshman, we create this sense of complacency. We found our friend group, we found our hangout spaces, and we're content, almost apathetic. But in our schedules and our cell phones and our busy culture, we construct this mundanity. We're no longer prioritizing meeting people, no longer celebrate the diversity of this campus, because we're stuck in ourselves. We forget to be present. Were you expecting that? You're more engaged now. This is where disturbance art comes in. Disturbance Art aims to shake up the community, bring us out of ourselves, and engage us in now. For that minute, or perhaps a few minutes, or even if we're lucky the rest of the day, we renew our appreciation for our peers, our community, and our surroundings. Disturbance Art capitalizes on the multifaceted arts community at Georgetown. I propose that we remove the boundaries of a stage and weave arts into daily life, with the aim of engaging at difference. Perhaps we create a group to organize disturbance art around campus, with representatives from diverse artistic backgrounds, drawing from the existing Arts Week model that's going on next week. Ideally, the disturbance art group would write a proposal to the administration, ensuring that these art performances would be protected on campus and promoting them through the community. For instance, street theater could be a tool for social justice and education. With the awareness and activism on campus, theater in Red Square, Kehoe, White Gravener, or Healy Lawn would be the perfect venue to explore and discuss social issues. Pop-up musical performances in public spaces would also encourage appreciation for campus musicians, exposure to new music. And we could build up our cultural focus in the arts with Reventon or Rangila flash mobs and Leos, a photography swap with international sister universities, sculptures of freestanding exhibits in ICC Galleria, residence dorms, Healy Family Student Center, or Healy Lawn. Disturbance art will strengthen the commonweal by fostering this creativity. Not just artistic capability, but also including problem solving, team building skills. It reconstructs the social environment of freshman year, meeting new people and really enjoying our time with them. Art allows this Georgetown community to open up and talk to each other, whether they're actively participating or observing. Essentially, disturbance art embodies our community and diversity. It rejuvenates the appreciation of campus and our surroundings, because, after all, this is my message to my freshmen, and it's my message to you. I challenge you to engage the community in some way creatively. It could be as simple as a photograph or a poem on the wall, or as dramatic as a quintet in Red Square. Either way, bring forth something that shakes us out of this complacency. Make us aware. Leave Georgetown better, more active, and more engaged than how we found it. Thank you.
Open it up for questions.
Hi, Eddie Maloney. That was great. I'm wondering what the barriers are to actually doing this. Is this something that needs to be centrally coordinated, or is this something that really is kind of ground up? And what do you see as the kind of need for organization here?
Georgetown's good at centrally coordinating things. We have a tendency to go towards that. So I think that if independent groups, the music department, or a classical quintet, decided that today's the day we're going to perform in Red Square, I think that's perfect. I think that's extraordinary. I worry about the red tape sometimes. If we need permission to do this, in what ways we can make this more integrated into the Georgetown community. So I would love for it to be an organic thing, and maybe it'll grow into that.
Sylvia Under asked to stand this time. I love the mural in the Lau stairwell. There are so many ugly stairwells. Take that and run with it.
I hope someone will.
Amanda Monroe from the Center for Social Justice. Thank you, Devika. I'm wondering about, we talked about sort of tangible barriers that you mentioned, the sort of red tape on campus, the fact that it's illegal to chalk on walls, et cetera. What about cultural or stigma barriers that you sense? Could we change, you mentioned, or your fellow students mentioned, walking around with our eyes on our iPhones. Do you think that perhaps there's a stigma that needs to be changed on campus about the importance of enjoying art or enjoying the present moment? And how would you encourage fellow students to do that?
Yeah. I mean, I think we all want to enjoy art. I don't think any of us are excited by what's happening on our iPhones as we walk around campus. But even the Lau mural, walking to, Lau 2 at 11 at night, I look up and I'm like, this is really cool. I'm glad someone's doing this, and I'm glad it's around me. And I think that's kind of what can bring this about, that people look up because there's something new, something exciting to see. Right when we just got here, you know, I looked up at Healy Hall and I was like, I go to school here, and it was amazing, and I was thrilled. And you know, I still try and make it a point to walk by Healy Hall because I think I forget that sometimes. And I think that'll help with us recognizing the beauty of the community and the beauty of art around us, just making it more ingrained in what's daily, what we see.
Marilyn McMorrow. So, a little bit skeptically, I loved the idea of the performances. I'm then picturing everybody taking their iPhones and taking a video of the performance. So, what's going to move it to talking to the person who happens to stand next to them, what they thought about that? Because I really do think the iPhone problem is really serious. You know, you put it together with what you already pointed out. You get a friend group and then you kind of relax, and then you're a senior and you say, there were so many amazing students at Georgetown and I never knew them because I settled. You know, so anyway, have you thought about what happens after?
Yeah, that's a great point. So I want to say that I'm not against iPhones. And I think that even if someone pops it out and takes a video and sends it to their friends, I think that starts a conversation, even within their friend group. I think back to Pluralism in Action, which, if you're not familiar with it, it happens during new student orientation. And every freshman sits down in McDonough and watches this performance about their peers. That's, you know, their pieces from their peers' admission letters, enacted by a student theater. And we have this discussion on it afterwards. And I think another thing that Georgetown is good at is dialogue and initiating that dialogue. So I do believe that people will turn around to the person next to them and be like, that was really cool. And maybe they'll walk to class together or through the ICC and be like, you know, they'll talk about those themes because, you know, we have to make it interesting enough for people to talk about. Renew that kind of excitement about what's going on, what's around. Thank you.
Excuse me. Hi, I'm Chester Gillis. I'm the dean of the college. How would you feel about something complementing this pop-up art, a permanent art gallery in Walsh? Because I'm building one.
That's awesome. That's really cool. So the idea of this was to bring art out from the theater, out from the gallery, where I feel sometimes, as someone who, you know, is well ingrained in the performance art community, often it gets shut up there. And I invite my friends, and they come for me. But I don't think that people who are necessarily uninterested or not intentional about going to these performances have to go and seek it out, right? So if there's a performance in the divine, they have to go find the divine. Instead, bringing it outside was my idea. I think any more art on this campus is always great, and I commend a gallery in Walsh. I'm really excited to see it open.
Hi, Devika. Really loved your proposal, and now my question is going to be extremely related to the one that was just asked, but I just want to share my experience as a student on my iPhone, like going around campus and seeing art. Once in the maze that actually isn't the ICC but is Walsh, I was on the second floor, and I was not on the third floor, which is where my class was, which is what I was trying to find. But I was walking past a bunch of sculptures, and I had never encountered that before at Georgetown because, like you said, you need to remove the stage to really like expose more people to this art. They were all nude sculptures, so I was a little surprised and taken aback. But I kind of want to see. It seems counterintuitive to establish or, like you said, I think centralize like performing arts. To kind of tell people to do it. But frankly, I think that that's almost necessary at first because I'm a little skeptical of things just happening organically. So I didn't know how, maybe more specifically, how you can, Walsh is far away. So I also think geographically, like it's interesting that the arts part of Georgetown, at least structurally, is far away. It's off campus almost. So I didn't know how you could, like more specifically, where you see these performances happening. Yeah, so I just talked for a long time, but I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. So we have this amazing, diverse arts community on campus that, you know, we have really talented musicians and visual artists and actors. Some of them are here that I'm very, very lucky to have with me. But I think we just need to bring it outside. Red Square is our free speech zone, right? It's famed. Healy Lawn, White Gravener Patio, you know, Healy Family Student Center. In this way, I don't intend to distract from class time. You know, I don't want to disturb a lecture or, you know, academics, but I want to disturb this, you know, leaning back in our chair kind of attitude that we have while walking through campus. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Marjorie Mandelstam-Balzer, Anthropology. And my question really is a good follow-up from what you just said. How much resonance do you sense there is among the students who are going to actually be doing these pop-up art shows and making our campus more wonderful? I'm kind of excited about the idea, but I'm thinking to myself, everybody's very, very busy. Do you have the cadres to make this work?
This proposal came out of ideas of other people. It came out of other people saying, hey, like, you know, I want to bring my cello into Red Square. Susie, who's sitting up there, is a very talented musician who sits and plays her guitar on the lawn on Red Square. And I see her, and I pass by, and it brightens my day. There's, you know, I know a lot of musicians who just want to go out and jam. I know a lot of people who are excited about the art that they do. This is something about passion, you know? And we make time for things that we're passionate about.
And we're going to take our last question from up on the balcony.
Okay, this is kind of more a response to the last two things. I live in a Magis Row called the Treehouse, and it's thematically centered around the performing arts. And we've been having open mics, open art galleries for like the last year. We have one coming up on Saturday. And the response from the Georgetown community has been totally overwhelming. Like students, I think our biggest one had about 70 people in our backyard over like a 2-hour-long spoken word and music event with all student performers, some who had never played in front of an audience before, a very much like DIY, get up and try it type of thing. And it's been awesome. Students are like, I didn't know Georgetown was like this. I thought I was coming to this international relations focused, you know, government focused school, and I had no idea that my peers had all these talents, and now here's my drawing, like I want to share it too. So I think that the bottom-up approach is super effective, and like Devika's right on the money with this, that like this school needs this, and it helps students who maybe never before thought that they could be creative or engage creatively or glance up from their iPhone to engage in that way to like get that to happen. So good job.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I'm pleased to introduce Dennis Williams, who will introduce our jury prize winners.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Dennis Williams. I work in student affairs, and I am a former Doyle faculty fellow from the English department. And as you've heard, the committee created the jury prize really in recognition for the unique place in the competition and frankly on campus of the notion of academic curricular reform for diversity. The idea appeared in several of the submissions for this competition. And in fact, it has already grown beyond merely an idea. It is a movement on campus. There is an actual proposal before the faculty for consideration this semester. And a lot of that is due to the work of a whole lot of folks, including the students who've organized as the last campaign for academic reform. So what we're going to hear is a presentation from two of those students, senior classics major Essie Ozamaboya and first-year student in the college, Cassidy Jensen. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, I'm not Cassidy, but she had a Spanish oral exam, so I'll be taking her space, trying to do her best. Hola. Go ahead.
Hi everyone. Hi everyone, my name is Essie. I'm a senior in the college, as Dean Williams mentioned before. And so our work started over a year ago, and actually we had a major milestone at the Doyle Symposium last year. We presented 9 learning goals based on feedback from faculty and students working in a group that was, charged by President DeGioia to begin this work and start thinking critically about academically dealing with these issues. And so we started at 9 learning goals, and we've come such a far way. And we've been working with both faculty and administrators to really, in a conversation, to make sure that something like this, something like this comes from both students and administrators and faculty, and something that students and administrators have a stake in. And so it's something that has to be presented as a conversation, and that's unusual for something in a curriculum or something that is academically present on this campus. And so I'll read a little bit from our rationale, from our proposal, and so here it goes. In a rapidly changing world, we must educate ourselves in how to reconcile a belief in universal values with respect for cultural differences. As leaders in the service of others, Georgetown graduates are expected to recognize the plurality of human experience, both within the U.S. and within world cultures. To this end, they should develop an intellectually rigorous understanding of multiple perspectives while deepening their understanding of the influence of their own perspective. Furthermore, this recognition and understanding should strengthen their ability to live as men and women for others, as they acknowledge the different ways in which relative degrees of power and privilege shape participation in the world. And so, as students engaging in this work, which is quite unusual, we've understood that this being successful would come from conversations held, on multiple levels between faculty members, between students. And so I'm happy that we're here again a year later at the Doyle Symposium to really engage with this work and to, field questions and to hear from you all again. So Esther will talk a little bit more about the lessons we've learned as students engaging in this work.
Yes, so my name's Esther. I'm a senior in the college, government major. And it really is nice to come full circle. I remember last year we were in Alumni House and we had the 9 learning goals, and it really feels good to come back to this. And there's Cassidy. There she is. Hey. So I really just want to talk about some of the lessons that we've learned as students, just hearing the great ideas that were presented today, just working on this for about a year and a half, just sharing some of our insights that we've learned as the last campaign. I guess it would be first, don't be afraid to work with administrators, but also don't be afraid to mobilize student power and voices on campus. I think it was clear the last presentation that we saw the students getting up and getting really engaged in wanting this initiative, their initiative to pass about performance art is, one way to do that. But also, for instance, the last campaign, we sent around some student support, and in only about 2 weeks, we got about 2,000 signatures from students who supported this initiative. And it just shows the power of mobilizing students on campus, at the same time working with administrators to make sure that things get done. So I think those 2 points are really important. And along those lines, keeping communication open, I think is another really strong point that we've had. We've been able to, I don't know how many times we've met with VP Bass in the Red House or meeting in our house with students, and keeping those lines of communication open is one way to start the dialogue that we hope to see in the classroom through this curricular reform. So we're happy to field questions at this point. But yeah, thank you so much. And here's some more members. We're just popping up all over the woodwork. No questions. Okay, that's a first.
Hello, my name's Kendra Northington again. Unfortunately, I was not at Georgetown last year, so I don't know as much about the curriculum changes you propose. Could you talk a little bit about how you envision the classes or how they might differ between the 4 undergraduate schools, if at all?
Yeah. Anyone wanna? Well, I guess I'm here. So it would be, the curricular change would be a 2-course overlay. So it would affect all of the undergraduate students, regardless of schools. And the courses that are proposed would be across all 4 schools. So right now we're in a preliminary stage where we're kind of looking to see what courses might fit that. So these are courses that are already being taught at Georgetown, but we just want students to further engage in this dialogue and really talk about relative degrees of the structures and conditions that affect, student and human interaction. We just believe that Georgetown educates leaders, and part of being a leader in this global world is understanding who lives in the world and how these structures and conditions shape our understanding of the world. So it ranges from classes in the MSB, lots of classes in the college. You can imagine, the social sciences really touch on some of these issues. So courses in the NHS, it really just ranges. We really want students to also have a U.S. and global focus because a lot of times I feel like Georgetown can get like DC, U.S. focused, but there's a big world out there. So we want students to be able to talk about and engage in all of the aspects of our world. Yeah, so I hope that helps. Someone else.
Hello, I'm Laurie King. I work in the anthropology department, and I was formerly a Doyle faculty fellow last year. And we had many fascinating and stimulating discussions about what diversity was, what it meant. And I don't know if you've already done this, but to sit and talk with a lot of the faculty members about not only how they redesigned their courses, but how when we sat together and discussed what is diversity, what does it really mean? The more we looked at that, the more problematic this idea of diversity became. And I found, since teaching here the last 6 years, that one of the key issues that's probably the hardest to talk about has to do with class differences and socioeconomic class, well, not just distinctions, but I guess divisions even. And I think that that's something that any diversity and difference class or curriculum should really try to engage with, because it's also one of the things that I find students are the least comfortable in talking about in classes where we begin to discuss diversity and what it means, especially here in Washington, even with our own city. Right, so thank you. It's a great initiative, and I'm happy you're doing that.
Thank you.
So.
Did you?
Sure.
Yeah, go.
Hi, my name is Dan Zager. I'm a first year in the college. I'll be working on the Provost Committee in this coming year. Very excited to continue the work that we've been doing. I've been very lucky to be working with Esther and Essie and Dr. Bass and the rest of them. Diversity, that's a really big word. I think before we even start getting into discussions about what diversity is or what it means to us or how it manifests in the U.S. and the world and a lot in our basic interactions even, I think it's really important to delve into why it's a very politicized word. Even saying diversity will either get a lot of people really, really excited and happy while turning off half of the room. And it is usually associated with a more liberal political ideology. And in this way, even just mentioning diversity can halt the conversation before it even starts. So as we start approaching faculty about when this requirement is implemented and how it will be, it's important to deconstruct why it can be so triggering for so many people. And once we get past that, that's the hard part. Once we get into once we start the conversation, we could start about how words like power and privilege shape the way we understand the world and concepts, and how our personal identities. The main goal of the requirement, at least the way that I read it, is how do we engage us the individual and how we are an intersection of identities and how we fit into an unequal world with structures that are specifically meant to disenfranchise certain groups of people. And I don't know if that answers your question, but it's a lot. It's a big conversation to have.
Hi, Amy Vandervliet. Sort of building off that question, how do you want to balance the conversation in a way that allows people to explore issues of diversity and power and privilege in a way that fits with their own interests, whether they're in NHS or SFS or the college or wherever, but also as a core component that everyone has to fulfill, meet certain requirements to make sure that everyone has a certain baseline experience. That what are the kinds of things you want people to take away so that there is some kind of sort of general understanding on Georgetown's campus of what's supposed to be happening with this diversity requirement?
So that's a great question. I think that when we wanted to craft this requirement or thought about courses that would count for this, it was more about having students reflect from whatever perspective or lens that they bring on their own position regarding this identity. So for instance, the courses focus on race, class, religion, ethnicity, sexual orientation, ability, all these different identities that people bring into campus, bring into the classroom that they can further explore. So we're not saying that the two courses will automatically, change someone's life or have someone gain a vastly new perspective, but it's a start. It starts a conversation in the classroom in a safe space where all Georgetown students have to be. I mean, I spend a lot of time in the CSJ, but not everyone does. So there's one space where Georgetown students have to be, and they take it very seriously, and that's the classroom. And we're just hoping to start a conversation in the classroom where students can not only understand, the degrees of power and privilege in this world, but also understand their position in that and reflect on that more than anything, to create, better men and women for others. Yeah. So yeah.
Hi, Amanda again from CSJ. Thanks for the shout out. So I just want to voice how appreciative I am of the amount of work that you've put into this initiative, as well as the amount of time you've apparently taken to look at the curriculum and what's already existent and sort of identify these individual courses that would serve this fulfillment. I wonder, and this is very tinted by my own perspective and my own work, but in your proposal, would you require or encourage faculty who are teaching these courses to in any way be trained or supply examples for the ways in which they would approach the classes? Essentially, are there going to be experiential components that are required so that even if the content that's dealt with in each of the classes is different, the experience also investigates or explores diversity sort of in the pedagogical approach? Is that a component of your proposal at all? Maybe I'm just unfamiliar with it.
Thank you for that question. That is definitely a part of not so much our proposal, but definitely, the implementation side. And so we've spent a lot, probably about half of this time dealing with the wordsmithing and just dealing with building the curriculum and making it something that is very Georgetown-like, but that people are comfortable with and that really fits across the core curriculum of all 4 schools, which can be difficult. But then the second part is implementation and whether we'll have, the faculty are prepared to do this, whether, admin, registrar stuff, just like the logistics, the not so fun part, which is also a huge part about proposing something to the core curriculum of this school, is that there's a lot of people, who have to be notified about these things and start this work. And so that is definitely something that's in the addendum of our proposal. And that's definitely something that we've been grappling with, and we're in the final stages of solving right now with the feedback of faculty members and administrators who have been really helpful with helping make sure that this integration into the core curriculum is seamless. And so we've been dealing with that. Thank you.
Just gonna add a little tidbit. So I think that, I've done a lot of CBL courses in the CSJ, and I've learned a lot from those courses, but I also think that there is a lot to be said about the academic rigor and intellectual vitality of cultural and ethnic studies. It is, a very vibrant academic core, and I know a lot of professors here who focus on that, so there's a lot to be said about having the experience, yes, which is very powerful, but also having the language and the academic toolbox to be able to express what you see in, going to a CBL or going to DC Reach and things like that. So I think that's why we want to focus a lot on the academic part of it, but the experiential is something that I've had experience with, and it's been a very powerful part of shaping, who I am. So both are very important.
My name is Randy Bass. I'm the Vice Provost for Education, and I just want to add my thanks to you for your leadership that I've followed over the last year. It's been I who've had the privilege of working with Essie and Esther and Dan over the last year, and I look forward to working with Cassidy. A diversity requirement had always been on our radar, but it's entirely you guys that kicked us in the ass to move us forward with it. I'm sorry, I can't think of a more delicate way to put that, because that was so important to provide the intensity and the momentum. And for me, you helped me see how urgent and deeply felt this had to be. And over the last few months, I've taken it very personally to try to help usher this forward. And when I have sat down with you those many, many times over the last several months, I hope you have felt that we have respected your perspective, because for me, it felt just like sitting down with colleagues. Sitting down with you to work line by line through changes was just like sitting down with the core curriculum committee or other colleagues. So it's been an amazing journey with you. It has also been unbelievably eye-opening for me to be intermediating this language around the campus. And the kinds of things you were talking about, the kinds of things that Dan was saying about diversity will cause two very different reactions just by the sheer word. There's a handful of other trigger words that will do the same. It has been eye-opening to me, the things that I've heard and had shared with me from people who I think believe in general in the requirement, but who really sought this to be as apolitical as possible, to become palatable, to be introduced into the curriculum. And it's been an inch-by-inch battle trying to make sure that we ended up with a requirement that somehow worked across the curriculum, but that would make a difference. And that complexity and sometimes difficulty the last few months has even deepened my resolve in how important it is to introduce this into the campus. It was form and content. But that also points to, and this is the last thing I'll say, that really, once we are victorious in the next month with a vote, the real work begins next. And then making this requirement matter, working with Dan and Cassidy, working with faculty. Over 30 Doyle Fellows from the past have already stepped forward and said, we're in, we'll help, help make this happen. As we looked around other campuses, we saw many examples of probably well-meaning diversity requirements that got very lukewarm over the years. So the real work to make that not happen is ahead of us. But thank you guys deeply for your leadership to get us to this point.
Thank you.
All right, so I want to recognize our honorable mentions. We have Spencer Crawford with Interreligious Dialogue, Engaging Difference Through Our Catholic Identity. Spencer, if you can just come up. And also M. Anila Malik, who wrote Social Justice Initiatives at Georgetown University, Practical Applications of Moral, Professional, and Educational Responsibility. Oh, sitting right next to you. So we don't have, I wish we had time to hear from them, but we do have to move into lunch, but I just wanted to recognize them and just invite you all to, yeah, thank you. Congratulations. Their proposals, which do contain some excellent specific recommendations, will be posted online along with all the winning proposals. So we really invite you to read them in detail and reflect deeply on them and be in touch with us about how we can move forward on this work. Now I'm pleased to introduce Michael Kessler, Managing Director of the Berkeley Center for Religion, Peace, and World Affairs, who will moderate the rest of the conversation and get us some lunch.
Well, thank you, everyone, for coming and engaging in this conversation, and thanks especially to the students who, yes. thanks especially to the students who captured so much of the conversation that we can only hope happens among students as bright and creative as those at Georgetown. I'm actually going to take the chair's privilege for a second and ask Spencer and Anila to stand up for a second and give us a really quick, dissertation advisors always say you have to have a 30-second elevator speech about what your dissertation is. Give us the 30-second elevator speech about what your proposal is and share with the group.
Thank you. I thought about a couple things when I started this proposal, primarily what research exists on educational gaps and closing educational gaps among underrepresented groups. I decided to focus primarily on socioeconomic and racial groups because of the events of the last few years. And I found that universities like UT Austin and Northwestern had incredible programs around engaging difference that had been shown to be effective over the years and were cost efficient. And so I designed my program around those.
Great, thanks.
So I just want to tell you a story and then call us to remember our Catholic identity here at Georgetown. And right now, the Jesuit residence is under construction, or reconstruction, or however you want to call it, to get new student dorms. That Jesuit residence is technically called Milady Hall, and Father Milady was a president of Georgetown University back in the 1800s, and he was called out for owning slaves, and Georgetown was asked to not own slaves anymore. So he had an option to free the slaves or sell the slaves, and he sold the slaves. And I want to say that story to just remember that our history with diversity, with race, with the many forms of diversity that we've talked about is murky. However, Georgetown is also at the forefront, or was at the forefront, of integrating racial diversity, socioeconomic diversity on our college campus in the 1900s. It was one of the first universities among our peer institutions to become more diverse, less homogeneous. And I think, in large part, although our history is murky, it's gray, it's uncomfortable, we need to grapple with it, but we also need to recognize how much that it shapes our commitment to diversity, our commitment to different ideas, different perspectives. And so my proposal just calls us to recognize our Catholic identity and how that shaped our perspective here at Georgetown, and how we can better recognize this in fostering our further proposals in social justice, in community-based learning, in creating a diversity requirement.
Great, thank you.